How about that?
Maybe put that
Did
on
I
your
fix
lap
it?
so it's not so loud.
Did I fix it? Did I fix it? Hi? Hi? How about that? Hi?
Maybe put that
Did
on
I
your
fix
lap
it?
so it's not so loud.
I can hear it on the stream now. Okay. Awesome. Well, at least I wasn't recording right there. All right. So, welcome. And since nobody heard any of that, you won't be able to see me as you usually do. But Josh and Natalie and Michelle are here from Force of Light Entertainment, which is awesome. We're super excited to have them.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, very excited to be here.
Yay! We got it working.
We are excited to have you.
Thank you.
I'm feeling a little out of my element today, so it's like, even Josh actually texted me 47. I was supposed to be on at like 45, and he's like, "Hey, you getting on?" Crap! I lost track of time.
I was actually on time today. That's a first for me. I'm usually late.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not there.
I can testify to that.
Yeah.
Make sure I'm getting these names as we go here. Dale Erdman. And Radio Rebellion is here. Welcome. Alberto. Okay. So before we start recording, I'll just go ahead and do this real quick, even though this is going to be super small and you probably can't see me. Is there a way I can change that? Nope, not that. Not that either. Hello? Okay. Well, anyway, we're doing a giveaway here, and if you look up in the top right corner there, it's really small, but anyone who shows up in chat today, will be able to win will be entered
Adam,
to win.
for some reason I can't hear you.
Okay.
If you can hear me, I cannot hear you.
What
Yeah,
in
I
the
can
heck
hear Josh,
is
but
going
not
on? Okay, how about that?
There we go.
God,
Yep.
this is all going nuts. I swear. All right.
Gotta love technology, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right, Michael Campbell. Let's enter him. So yeah, so if anyone didn't hear that, just by showing up and chatting today, you'll be entered to win a Han prize package. There's a little Funko Pop and Marvel's Han Solo 1 through 5. So just by showing up and chatting today, you've all been entered already. You don't have to do anything else. Let's add Stephen Miller. And at the end of the stream, we'll pick a random name. You don't have to be here, and as long as I can get a hold of you somehow. Yeah. So that should be pretty fun.
Pretty awesome giveaway there today, Adam. I like it.
Cool. All right. Well, I am recording. I think we've got audio everywhere. All right, let's try it.
Good to go.
All right, so Natalie and Michelle, if you can't hear I usually play the transition sounds. So if you can't hear, just let me know. But I think it's all working. All right, you ready, Josh?
I'm ready.
Natalie and Michelle, you guys ready?
We're ready.
Yes.
All right, cool.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
Hello there, everyone, and welcome to episode 31 of the From a Certain Point of View podcast. Today, we're talking all about the top 3 animated films in Disney history. No, actually, that's not.
You're going to do that to me. You're going to throw me under the bus on that one already.
Moana is definitely in the top 3, right, Adam?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, we'll have to fill
If you're
our
following
audience in on that.
if you're following our
Following
Twitter
us on
account,
Twitter.
that's because I didn't switch my Twitter account last night, and I was tweeting out stuff about Disney, and it ended up on the Star Wars account. So.
But Moana is certainly in the top 3. No doubt about it. No, but all joking aside, we are here to talk about Star Wars today, and we have myself and Adam here and a couple very special guests. We have Natalie and Michelle from Force of Light Entertainment, and just so you can kind of fill us in and our listeners in, tell us a little bit about yourselves and Force of Light Entertainment.
Yes. Well, Natalie and I are sisters. Natalie is my slightly older sister.
Just a little bit older.
Yes. And we actually kind of have a similar story from what I know of you two. Like, I had been on for the last several years, really enjoyed listening to different people on YouTube and things, talk Star Wars and stuff. And it just kind of seemed increasingly more and more people were just negative. It's just like negativity has won the day.
Mm-hmm.
And, I told Natalie I would like to start something because Natalie can tell you I will just naturally begin talking about movies or TV and get an in-depth conversation.
Like sometimes from the time I would wake up when she lived out of town and she would come stay with me for a week at a time, like I would wake up, like not even have my coffee and she's talking to me about a movie or a show or how things, and I'm like, okay, can I wake up yet? But so it's very natural to us to talk about movies and shows and things like that.
Yes. So it's kind of like that. I was like, well, why don't we just record our conversations that we're already having? And I wanted to make sure to start something that had a positive approach. And of course, you guys know that doesn't mean we always think everything's wonderful. It just means our brand isn't negativity, which sadly, so many, it seems to be the case.
It's like
today.
Negativity sells today.
It does.
Yeah,
So we just
definitely.
try to promote an environment where you can have different opinions, but let's be positive about it.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
great.
And
I think that sounds very familiar to what we're trying to do as well and how we got started too.
Yeah, really. And Josh and I have done some of the same things. We've gotten into it a little bit over Star Wars stuff in the past, and we're still friends. And I can respect his opinion on stuff, and he can maybe kind of respect a little bit of mine.
Absolutely.
I know.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so that's kind of where we came from, and you talking about just talking about TV shows. I listened to your episode this week about just some of the streaming shows you talked about, and I had a blast just listening to what you guys are just watching now, and also listened to your Breaking Bad episode. And Breaking Bad is, for both Josh and I, one of our favorite shows of all time.
Yeah, I love Breaking Bad.
I'm actually rewatching it right now.
Yeah, it's a great show.
Yeah. I actually just rewatched it recently because I was getting ready for season 5 of Better Call Saul, which I actually felt was the best season yet of Better Call Saul. So I was kind of watching Breaking Bad leading up to that recently.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
But yeah, so normally at this point in the introduction, we kind of talk about what we've been up to this week in Star Wars. So if there's anything that we've been watching or playing, if it's a video game or, listening to in the world of Star Wars. So, Adam, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, I really the only thing I did this week was I finished up Alphabet Squadron, and that was for the book club. Excuse me. I loved Alphabet Squadron so much, and I know Josh is starting to read it. Natalie and Michelle, I don't know if you guys have jumped into that at all, but man, it's so good.
I actually just started the Audible version of that.
Oh,
this
nice.
week.
Okay. I started the Audible version, and I had a hard time with it just because I usually listen to Audible at work, and the first few chapters of that book are so detail heavy. You're meeting a lot of new people right off the bat, and I just couldn't do it at work. So I ended up just getting the book and going through it, the old-fashioned way. And man, got to the end last night, and it's so good. I love that book so much. I can't wait. The new one's coming out in like 3 weeks, I think now. So I hope you love it, because I loved it.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I'm kind of torn between the Hunger Games prequel that recently came out and Alphabet Squadron. So I'm kind of going back and forth between those two. I think I got to pick one and stick to it and finish it out. So
Awesome. What have you been up to? How about Natalie and Michelle? Have you guys done anything Star Wars related this week?
Well, we both watched Return of the Jedi because we're going to be
Yeah.
discussing that on our Sunday podcast.
Nice.
And then I also watched Solo for the first time. It's been about a year since I watched Solo, and I had a lot of fun watching it and going back through it again.
Oh, and
Yeah.
I wanted to say, when I was watching Return of the Jedi last night, and Obi-Wan, he says that about from a certain point of view.
You got it. It clicked. Light bulb.
Yeah. Like, okay, that's where that comes from. That's awesome.
Yep.
Yep.
that's right.
I had to go through and picked out all the. There's actually so many more like points of view quotes that I didn't even pick out when I was going through making some of the stuff for the show when we first started this. And like every time I go back and watch a movie and they say it, I'm like, well, there's another one I can pull from later. So
Right. It's so true to life though that so many things is from a certain point of view. It can be
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
yeah. And Josh, what have you been up to?
Well, I just want to I wanted to comment on the Solo, comment that Michelle had there. And I know that the more I watch that movie, the more I love it. And it is a
It
very
grows on you.
fun Star Wars movie that kind of grows on you. I haven't been up to too much in Star Wars this week, although last night I did watch the Disney Gallery episode on practical effects, which I'm really excited to talk about today. And I actually watched the first 2 episodes of The Mandalorian again last night, just because that documentary just got me so hyped to watch The Mandalorian again. And I just, I had to jump in there and started season 2 of Rebels as well. So
Nice.
Nice. So we had an open-ended poll this week, huh?
we did. I decided to switch it up, do kind of an open-ended poll. I didn't want to limit this question to just 4 different options, because I think there's so many great moments from The Empire Strikes Back to choose from. And if you were listening last week, we talked about the 40th anniversary of The Empire Strikes Back. And the weekly poll was, what is your favorite moment from The Empire Strikes Back? And we had several responses. A lot of responses were centered around kind of Yoda and Dagobah. Radio Rebellion responded as everything with Yoda, which I can totally understand that. Rural Farm Boy replied with the Battle of Hoth, a gif from the Battle of Hoth. And the Force Losers podcast responded with the confrontation between Luke and Vader on Bespin. And there were a couple other moments too, like I Love You and I Know. Carillion Blue had that comment, and we're going to actually be talking probably a little bit about that moment today when we talk about Han and Leia. So
Yeah, that might come up.
so thank you to everybody who responded to our weekly poll this week. And Adam, can you tell us about what's coming up on the show this week?
Yeah, well, we got some news, and Josh mentioned Disney Gallery. So after news, we're going to jump into that. That's going to be the practical effects episode, like he mentioned. And then a few weeks ago, after we did the psychology of... who was that? I can't remember the last one we
Drawing
did.
a blank right now.
Ahsoka and Maul.
Ahsoka
That's
and
the
Maul,
one.
yeah,
That's the one.
yes.
See, they know our show better than
See,
we do.
Thank you.
Natalie and Michelle actually reached out to us on Twitter, I believe, and just said, the Han and Leia would be a great one. And Josh and I both loved that. And so we said, hey, why don't you join us for that? So that's going to be our kind of like our main segment here is the psychology of Han and Leia, what makes them tick, how are they similar? How are they different? How do they kind of come together in that manner? So the psychology of Han and Leia is our last segment for today. But before all that, why don't we start with news?
Well, you want the bad news or the really bad news?
Okay, so once again, our news is brought to you by farfarawaynews.com. And the first piece of news we're discussing today is a first look at a new show that is called Star Wars Jedi Temple Challenge. And we got our first look at this. We got a little trailer for the show. It features Ahmed Best, who, of course, voiced Jar Jar Binks and played Jar Jar Binks. And Adam, we talked about how we wanted this show to be like Legends of the Hidden Temple, but Star Wars version. I think that's what we're getting. And
It still
Michelle and
looks that
Natalie,
way.
feel free to comment if you've seen the trailer for this as well. But what do you think about what we got here?
Well, I have not seen the trailer, so I'll let Adam take this.
Okay.
Fair enough.
I watched a bit of the trailer. I'm really, I think the thing I'm most excited about is that Ahmed Best is kind of back and doing something fun in Star Wars. You know, he kind of really got the short end of the stick with everything that's happened around him, and you know that's kind of a understatement to say the least. But I'm really happy that he wanted to come back. He wanted to do something fun, and that he got to do something like this that's interactive with fans and you know, kids especially. And I think it looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's exactly what I wanted it to be. I'm excited. You know, my 3-year-old daughter Sydney, watched the preview with me, and she's like, "That looks so cool." So yeah, we're gonna have to watch that together, and I'm very pumped. I'm excited. Anytime you get to introduce your kids to Star Wars in a fun way, I think they're obviously really targeting the younger population here with this one. So it's actually arriving this Wednesday, June 3rd. But they threw me a little bit of a curveball with this, Adam, and we had a slight disagreement about this the other night.
Well,
when we were
yeah, I was
chatting.
thinking about it. I don't think we're as far off as you know, maybe we think we are here.
Right. The curveball is that they're not putting this on Disney Plus. It's actually going to be on the Star Wars Kids YouTube page. So for the life of me, I couldn't figure out, you know, why are they not putting this on Disney Plus, or at least putting it on both YouTube Kids and Disney Plus. I was kind of perplexed by that, but Adam enlightened me a little bit. Adam, what were your thoughts on why that might be?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start by saying, like, I thought that this was going to be on Disney Plus too, when we first found out about this. And I was definitely surprised that they chose to put this on YouTube, and that it was on the YouTube Kids channel. I think it fits there pretty well, actually, as far as instead of being on YouTube proper, you know. I think that this is them. So I mentioned one of two things. I really think that this is them trying to have something flagship for the YouTube Kids channel. Something to kind of carry that channel and to bring some new eyes to it, something like that. The other more glass half empty view of this is that maybe they're not as confident in the game show as a whole, and so it maybe just didn't fit to them on Disney Plus. But I think it's cool, actually, that they decided to put this out there for free. There's no paywalls to any of this. So, you know, you don't have to have a Disney Plus subscription. You don't have to buy anything. It's just, you go to YouTube Kids and it's there, and you can check it out anytime. I think that's a really cool method of getting the show out to people.
That was nice.
Yeah, I think both of those are possibilities as to why maybe they're just trying to get a tentpole show for their YouTube Kids channel. I guess my angle on it was I wanted this to reach as many kids as possible, and I know there's 50 million some subscribers on Disney Plus, so I was just kind of curious about that, but we'll see how it plays out. And next up, we have in our continuing rumor mill for kind of live action series and casting and everything. We're talking about the Cassian Andor series and the possibility of Enfys Nest showing up on the Cassian show. And I guess there was a comment on the actress's Instagram post who played Enfys Nest. There was kind of a question of if she'll show up in the Cassian Andor series, and she said, "No spoilers here, sorry." So I guess that comment in itself led some people to think that maybe she's in it. I don't know. I mean, again, this is just a rumor, and just kind of how you're interpreting her comment of just saying no spoilers here, sorry. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think there's a possibility. I could see how they could collide in their worlds.
Certainly.
But I see what you're saying too. She could just totally be saying that, just like, I'm not going to spoil anything. May or may not mean anything.
Right. Yeah, that's how I kind of took it.
Yeah, that's kind of, I took it to just rumor mill thing. People take a comment and run with it. It seems to have been happening a lot lately, but yeah, I think that's what it is. So, I will say I would love to see Enfys Nest though, and if that happens, I would be super excited to see Enfys Nest back again.
And Michelle, you said you just watched Solo recently. Natalie, did you watch it as well, or?
I haven't seen it in a couple of years, but I would like to rewatch it though. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I mean, I
What
think
did
it's
you
a really fun movie.
It is. What
Yeah.
did you guys think of the Enfys Nest character? I know a lot of people were really got excited about that character, and everything.
Well, I mean, she's not like one. People do get really excited. To me, she's almost like I want to compare to Boba Fett. I never totally understood the excitement of Boba
okay.
Fett, but I appreciate, like our nephew loves Boba Fett. It's his
Yeah.
favorite character.
Yeah.
I appreciate people that do, but people did really get into Enfys Nest, and she wasn't interested because I think the shock of when she took her helmet off and it was this young girl. It was kind of like, oh, like it just kind of caught you off guard. So,
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
she's interesting. I definitely wouldn't mind seeing her in something else.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I share your opinion on that one as well. And I think that I didn't quite get the hype of the character at first, but I see how kind of that surprise reveal of it not being who you expected it to be, and it being this younger female character that could be part of the rebellion, really lends itself to a lot of kind of possibilities. Next up, we have a bit of news coming from the world of games, and we're talking about the ILMX lab that announced that they're coming up with a new action adventure VR experience called Star Wars Tales from Galaxy's Edge. So it's kind of going to be a way to explore Galaxy's Edge, since none of us can visit Galaxy's Edge right now because they're currently closed. But this is a way to kind of do that in the world of VR. And it says the game will feature an original story with new characters and explore new regions of Batuu, and will take place in between The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. Guests can immerse themselves in these stories both inside and outside of our parks. So we kind of got an image there too on the article, just an image of Batuu and everything. So any thoughts about this news?
It
Well,
just
I think
means I have to get an
I think
Oculus.
it's cool, but I have a VR set up for PlayStation, and they keep not giving any of their stuff to
Yeah.
PlayStation. So I'm just always disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, I think is this one for Oculus, Adam?
Yeah.
I
You know?
think it is.
Yeah, it just means I have to get an Oculus headset.
Yeah, apparently.
I haven't played Vader Immortal.
Immortal.
I haven't played that either, and I've only heard amazing things about that. So
Michelle, what is the one where you can actually? Is that the thing?
Yeah,
where
that's
you-
what they're like. I would love to get an Oculus, but it'd only be for that purpose. It's
Yeah,
Vader
yeah,
Immortal.
right.
It looks
Yeah.
so cool.
yeah,
Same here. I hear you there. I was debating getting one, but I was like, man, this is the only game that I would want to play on it, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, and speaking of Galaxy's Edge and Batuu, we have some news about Disney reopening, actually, which I'm very excited about because my family has plans to visit Disney World in September, and we've had those plans for a couple years now, but we weren't sure with the whole COVID-19 and everything if we were going to be able to go on that trip even. But they have a new reopening plan, which starts on July 11th.
Nice.
Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom will be opening on July 11th, and Epcot and Hollywood Studios will follow shortly after that on July 15th. Of course, there will be limitations to capacity. They're doing a whole new reservation system to make sure they limit how many people are in the park. You know, they're going to have social distancing measures in place, sanitation, more sanitation areas, all those things. So any thoughts on this phase one reopening? I know, Adam, I know you probably have some opinions on this one.
my only opinion is I'm excited just to see it open again. It's one of those, I would love to actually be there day one, and I know that I might be in a smaller group of people that might want to do that.
You want to be that guinea pig, huh?
Yeah.
I'm glad
I'll
I'm
be
gonna
the canary
like 2
of
months
sorts.
after that, you know.
Yeah, I would love to just jump in, and because that there's going to be something special to welcome people back, and I would just love to see. If I had one other passion in my life other than Star Wars, it would be Disney stuff, and I would just love to. I would love to get to go and see what that would look like on day one of reopening. So.
Yes.
Yeah, I would.
Michelle
We
and
would
I,
love to be there day one too, because if it's limited, then if you get in, you could go through the rides a lot.
That's also
more.
true.
I
That's
think
a
it's
very good point. Yeah, you might have your own spot at the bar too, in Oga's Cantina and everything.
Yes, like you could get to do all the different or spots on the Han Solo ride, Smuggler's Run,
yeah.
whatever it is.
Don't have
Yeah.
to mess with any of those reservations that you had to do for Rise of the Resistance, or
Yeah.
Yeah, I know for us, my wife was a little bit upset because, we had reservations for different restaurants, and we had a reservation for Oga's Cantina and stuff like that. And all those reservations were canceled because they're doing this whole new system where they have to contact you if you already have a ticket and set up like a reservation system that they're doing. So a lot of stuff's kind of up in the air right now, but hopefully it will work itself out and we can do some new reservations. So.
Yeah.
We also have I think, some disappointing news this week regarding the High Republic era.
Very disappointing news. I was heartbroken with this.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of broken hearts out there about this one. Michael Siglane, creative director at Lucasfilm Publishing, released a statement announcing the new date for the launch of the High Republic, which will begin in January of 2021, starting with the release of Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule and A Test of Courage by Justina Ireland on January 5th. So I'm wondering, in the world of publication, and everything, why do we think this got pushed back? Any ideas about that?
I mean, I just automatically thought it was related to COVID-19 pushing everything back. That was
Same.
where my
Mhm.
mind went,
Same.
because I don't see any other reason it would have been pushed back.
Yeah, same. And I think the only conversation around that is that other novels, like the Alphabet Squadron sequel, is coming out, and then Thrawn got pushed up from October to September. I think that those were just far enough along in the process that those were already able to come out, and that Light of the Jedi and the Justina Ireland one that I'm blanking on, even though you just said it, I think those just weren't quite far enough along that they actually did get impacted by this stuff. I really think that's what happened here.
Yeah, I guess I was curious about how exactly they were impacted, because I mean, if you're an author, you can probably social distance while you write and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe it has to do with the.
I think it's more production.
The production
yeah,
process
yeah.
of churning out those books. That's
Right.
Kind of the thing that makes sense to me with this.
Yeah.
But Adam, you had kind of mentioned, I think you got a little ahead of yourself there with a bit of good news about Thrawn Ascendancy. And that was our last news article for this week, which was this one got bumped up, correct?
Yeah. I'm just too excited that it got bumped up. I just had to spill the beans early.
So Thrawn Ascendancy, or is it Ascendancy or is it?
Yeah, Thrawn Ascendancy. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And Stephen Miller, I want to bring this up real quick. One of the things they also like to do is have, and Pizza and Parsecs mentioned this also, that they might have wanted to have like a release tour for something like the High Republic, and Stephen Miller mentioned it's harder to do events with launches and authors and signings and stuff. So that very well could possibly impact release dates too.
That's a good point, something I didn't really consider, so thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, but back to Thrawn. Sorry about that.
So back to Thrawn, Chaos Rising will be on sale September 1st, actually, and that's the first book in the planned trilogy, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, Adam, we know you're excited about it. Any other thoughts about this novel coming out sooner than planned?
Just, I'm very excited. This was one that was, I mean, it started off, it's had like four different release dates now. And some of them were over the summer, and then it got pushed back to October, and now it's back up a month. So glad it's just coming a little bit sooner.
Yeah, definitely. I never really got into any of the Thrawn novels, to be honest. I feel like I'm just way behind, and it's kind of overwhelming thinking about getting into it. But I know there's a lot of people out there that are excited, so I'm excited for them.
The last Thrawn trilogy you could really jump into without having to read anything else. It stands on its own as a trilogy pretty well. So
cool. Might have to check it out at some point. So that wraps it up for our news segment for this week.
All right, let's do our Disney Gallery chat.
My disappointment in your performance cannot be overstated.
Yesterday, episode 5 of the Disney Gallery called Practical, right?
Practical.
Yep. Started streaming on Disney Plus. This one, as the name implies, was largely about practical effects in The Mandalorian. And I know Josh was very much looking forward to this. Practical effects are something that you really enjoy, something that you...
Not at all. You're completely wrong.
Yeah.
No, honestly, I am all about practical effects. You know me, Adam. You know that I am super excited about this type of thing. So I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Nice. So it starts off, and I never say Rick's last name right, but
Me neither.
Famiua?
Famiua?
Okay, we'll go with that.
Famiua.
But this episode starts with him kind of talking about what makes Star Wars. And one of the things that he said was there's this mix of cutting edge technology, and that's used to bring things down to a personal and relatable and human level. Which is, I think, as you look back through the movies as a whole, on each different trilogy, I think that that's one of the main things that makes Star Wars just a bit different from any other sci-fi franchise, or certainly different from like a Marvel franchise, where there's this very like you said, a relatable and human level to all this stuff. It feels like this is a universe that you could live in,
Yeah, I think it has to be grounded in real life, and the universe feels lived in. It's not shiny and new like some sci-fi films, kind of come across as. It's a kind of a dirty, rusty, down to earth kind of place. I mean, you think about the droids. Even I think, I don't know if it was Rick Famuyiwa or somebody else who mentioned. Just how R2-D2 had all these scratches and dents and stuff on him. Maybe it was even Pedro Pascal that talked about that. But everything just feels lived in,
Yeah, definitely. Natalie and Michelle, did that ring any bells for you? That speak to you in any way?
Yes,
It does.
I really enjoyed this entire episode, and I'll let you guys get into what I really loved about this episode. But yes, practical effects, that's why, as much as I love the story of the story in the prequels, I almost prefer the sequels just literally because of the practical effects.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that just makes it feel like Star Wars.
Right.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you there.
I think that's actually one of the things that makes me appreciate Phantom Menace more and more as time goes by on that movie, is how much more it embraced all the
Phantom Menace had more practical stuff in it.
I actually never knew
two.
until I watched Disney Gallery a few weeks ago that was actually the largest the one movie that used the largest amount of miniatures was the Phantom Menace, and I never knew that. But that's one of the things I think for me that just sets that movie aside from the other prequels. So.
Yeah, like I love the story of the prequels and everything, but there are times when like just the execution and the CG and everything can kind of take you out of it a little bit and doesn't feel as real and grounded. And whereas, the sequel trilogy tried to get back to the practical effects and shooting on location and all those things. So I'm with you there, Michelle.
One of the quotes I pulled out of this from the very beginning that I thought was really fun, and it kind of actually made me think of the rest of the episode in this way. But Jon Favreau talked about how he and Dave Filoni were basically treating this as like they were playing with their Star Wars action figures, Like this was kind of like their creative outlet, and they just let their imagination run. And like you can kind of see that with characters like we'll talk about Queel a little bit, and then definitely the child. You can almost just kind of see that is, them just letting their imaginations go and just letting, these puppets that come to life in like a real space just kind of take over, But then they actually get into a lot of Queel, and which I was very interested in, and I didn't catch the name of the actress that's in the suit, but they went back to this marriage of cutting edge tech and a practical effect of someone actually being there. This isn't a CGI character. This is someone wearing the suit with this mask, and they talked about how this wasn't easy because there's all these like servo motors and things that are just whirring in your head, and you're trying to hear dialogue, and it's hard, and but having that all come to life was it's really cool seeing that in real time, how that mask moves, how lifelike that looks.
It does.
Well, and it's another Emphas Nest situation of I was like, oh, it's a woman behind behind this character.
Yeah.
I was thinking it's like I need to catch up on the last couple episodes of this documentary, but I thought for a second when you said actress, I thought, did he mean to say actor? I didn't realize, so I had no idea.
Oh yeah. Like I said, I didn't quite catch her name, but yeah, she was under that, and then Nick Nolte voiced over top of it, and then there are actually puppeteers that are doing this on the sidelines. We're making the eyes move in the mouth, that type of stuff. So there's this actor that's almost like miming some of the stuff under the suit, and then you have a voiceover artist that's talking above this, and you have puppeteers on top of that are all kind of working together as a team to make that happen.
Yeah, I just love the combination of techniques used to bring this character to life. All those different things blended together.
Yeah.
Well, and it looks great.
It does.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
And go ahead.
oh, so what I was going to say is it's amazing watching this that they're able to pull this off and make it look so seamless, because as I think Deborah Chow points out, you have a puppet, you have Quill that's played by multiple people, you have Mandalorian played by multiple people. There's just so much that they yet are able to, you got IG-11, that they just were able to blend together so seamlessly.
Yeah.
For sure.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of speaks to the next segment of this episode, which was called the charm of practical effects. And like you were mentioning, kind of the magic of just bringing this stuff to life in real space. Bryce Dallas Howard talked about how she was kind of worried about, with all this technology, how practical effects would start to fade away, and how we'd be relying on things like the volume and green screening and special effects of that nature. But then they talked about like I said before, the magic of bringing something like Queel or the child to life in front of you, and how acting on that is, they use that quote, acting is reacting. And when you see this thing happening right in front of you, it's so much easier to have that connection with it. And, I love just, there's that one moment with Dave Filoni where they're practicing bringing the child to life. And it's the moment where he's reaching up out of that repulsor cradle, whatever that thing is. And he has the puppeteer. Oh, I'm punching my mic. He has the puppeteer kind of bring his arms up, like he's reaching for something, and Dave just goes, "Oh man, that's the stuff right there." But you can have that emotional connection when it happens right in front of you.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about using practical effects and using puppets and using things like that, and it's more believable for the actors, I think you can pull out the best possible performances from the actors kind of reacting to those things, really being there. Like seeing Baby Yoda on the set and then reacting to that is so much easier than just pretending that there's some character there that's going to be CGI later or something,
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I mean, if I was an actress, I feel pretty confident I would prefer that, to have something there, like you said, to react to instead of just having to
imagine.
Yeah, just totally imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I shared the fears that Bryce Dallas Howard had about going away from practical effects. I was worried about that for a long time, because I just never want practical effects to go away, because I think it creates something that can be so believable and so much more timeless, because just like the original trilogy feels timeless, because it didn't rely, at that time they didn't have CGI that could later become 10 years later outdated. So I think it's really important to always have those practical effects.
Yeah, Michelle and we totally agree on that. And we were actually talking recently about how well the originals, they've aged well, because of things like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Roar Farm Boys mentions Misty Rosas is the name of the actress that's in the wheel suit. Thank you, RFB, for that. And then I wanted to mention Gina Carano said something about that, how when she sees the child, she's actually talking to it. She knows it's not real, but she's talking to it because you feel like it's real,
Yeah.
And that helps. Like I said before, just being able to see this happen and not have this put in by a computer later. You're not pretending. You're able to see this in real time and react to that as an actor, and that's incredibly important.
Yeah.
But by the way, I'm seeing Mr. Rez in the chat saying Baby Yoda is real and no documentary can change my mind.
That's right. I agree.
I love that comment. That's
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I loved about this episode, was getting to see the child brought to life, or they all kept calling him the baby. But he does,
Right.
when you just see him move, you realize they have to do very little with him as far as CGI, because he looks so real.
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
the way they've made him. And I thought it was funny you brought up Gina Carano. She said that he would be there in makeup while she's got her makeup done. And she said the people would be talking to the baby like it was a real baby. And she didn't really blame them, because it seems that way.
I love the image of Toro Calican was his character, and I can't think of the actor's name. But Toro Calican just kind of holding the child, and he's kind of like cuddling it and almost like petting it in a way. But
I mean, I would want to.
yeah, for sure.
Same here.
For sure.
In fact, I've had the thought that Disney, in order to make up some of their lost revenue from the COVID situation, if they would put the Baby Yoda like in a glass box that couldn't be messed with and let people pay to take pictures with them, they could begin to bring back a lot of revenue.
Oh yeah.
No doubt.
I mean, if they wanted to bring that character into the parks as like a live character, like a meet and greet type thing, oh man.
Yeah.
For sure.
That would be one way to take the pressure off the lines of Rise of the Resistance, is to have that alongside it.
I just know that at some point I will own that
animatronic
Baby Yoda toy that they're selling, and I need to have it.
Michelle too.
Yes, definitely.
The next section that they got into was timeless techniques, and I thought a lot of this was interesting because they talked about some stop motion that they used for the blurgs. I would have never guessed that some of that was stop motion. It really worked well. Dave Filoni even mentioned, when Jon Favreau wanted to do this, he wasn't quite sure how stop motion would work out, but then, when it actually happened, it looked really good. So I was very interested to see stop motion actually made a comeback. Because that was something that was very, very heavily used in the original trilogy. It was stop motion. Mm-hmm. I love the talk about the Kowakian monkey lizard on a spit, and how
was hilarious.
That went through some different iterations before they arrived at what they actually wanted to do, because they actually had the other lizard that was supposed to be laughing at it as it was cooking.
I'm with Dave Filoni on that. I think he should have been laughing, like that laugh he gives in Return of the Jedi.
It would have been cool to hear that laugh again. But it's just I got a kick out of how he was kind of like confused about how laughing was not okay, but then having the sad sounds as the other one is cooking is more okay.
Yeah.
But yeah. And the next thing that really actually kind of blew me away was the weapons, the blasters. They talked about how they went back, and in the original trilogy they used World War II weapons that they had borrowed or rented. and they couldn't actually modify them too much for for reasons of modifying a firearm. I'm guessing something like that.
Yeah.
So they actually did the same thing with this. They went back and they found some World War II pistols and rifles and things like that, and they used those as inspiration and slightly changing up the look and having that type of look for the blasters, and it really fits. When you see these like World War II style pistols that they use, it really fits into that universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just love how everything in this show is kind of modeled after, the original Star Wars and the original
Yes.
trilogy, certainly, but it just has that look and that feel, and it feels like it just fits right alongside those films, and using all these techniques and even down to the weapons. So I really have a great appreciation for that.
Okay, so there's a little
Yeah,
conversation
correct.
in chat going, and we'll bring this up real quick. So we have some characters: Groot, Baby Groot, or Baby Yoda, or Gizmo.
Baby Yoda.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is a Star Wars show. We have to go with Baby Yoda, right?
Of course, I do love me some Baby Groot, but
My
Yeah.
daughter does too.
but Baby Yoda, I think takes it.
And Stephen Miller says
Baby Yoda is
E.T.
king.
And Stephen Miller is reminding us that E.T. is definitely canon. So
It's true. E.T. is canon. E.T. was what in the kind of that Senate
he was in one of the Senate
Yeah.
chairs, one of the Senate
conference
pods.
room
Yeah,
or whatever it was. Yeah. In the prequels.
he is indeed. And then we wrap up with Tales from the AV Club, and I got a kick out of Favreau wanting to make like models, because he says that's you make a model and then you get to take it home.
Yeah, you get to keep it.
Yeah, which is pretty cool, and I want a model now.
Yeah.
And then we touch on this a little bit, but they applied some of the techniques of the original trilogy, as far as camera effects, and it had Favreau specifically mentioned like the star fields and how the star field would move to give you a little bit of an extra sense of motion. And they did that as well with some of the CG shots even. So they're kind of marrying that technology with some of those original techniques that they used way back in the 70s and 80s. Which I thought was pretty fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So that really kind of took us to the end of the episode. Natalie and Michelle, was there anything else that stood out to you in this episode of Disney Gallery?
No, I loved all the Baby Yoda stuff, and I love whoever made the comment that fantasy has no limits.
Yeah,
That kind of stood out to me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you love all the Baby Yoda concept art?
Some of that was pretty rough, but I'm glad they
Yeah.
went where they did.
Yeah,
I'm glad we got the Baby Yoda that we got, for sure.
Some of them was kind of frightening. So
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
That's scary.
yeah. Some of it was definitely scary, and I loved how once they settled on something, they started making the maquettes, and then the maquettes weren't too cute, and so they had to kind of go back and redo those. And yeah, that was very interesting. Josh, what about you? Anything else stand out for you?
Not really that we haven't mentioned. I just really love this episode because you know how much I am behind practical effects. So I'm all about it, and this was kind of my bread and butter episode right here. So I enjoyed it.
Nice. Okay, well, having that all behind us, it's time for our main discussion of the week, and that is the psychology of Han and Leia. We all ready to jump in?
Let's do it. Yes.
Luke, you're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
Okay, so we have been taking a look at the psychology of certain characters in the Star Wars universe, and today we're going to look at two classic characters, Han and Leia. And as mentioned in last week's episode, I just love the romance between Han and Leia in The Empire Strikes Back, and I feel that their relationship is just so believable. It's so much earned throughout the original trilogy. I think it's the best love story in all of Star Wars because of that. So before we get any further, how do you guys feel about that relationship between Han and Leia?
Well, I think it's definitely the best love story in all of Star Wars. To me,
Oh, yeah.
there's no question. There's nothing that
Yeah.
compares with it because it just feels so natural, so organic,
Yeah,
like you
yeah.
said. And I go one step further. I think they're one of the greatest couples in movie history. Really.
Yep.
I can
could
get behind that.
that as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Jinx. But yeah, and it's for me, it's above and beyond even Anakin and Padme, because it's certain parts of Anakin and Padme's relationship felt a little bit out of place. The age difference, for sure, once you go from episodes 1 to 2.
The attempt at Shakespearean dialogue didn't help much either, I will say.
No.
Yeah, that my favorite fireside chat scene in episode 2 just didn't help
It's a
anything.
little rough.
But I mean, all women do want to hear men talk about how they hate sand because it's so coarse. That was romantic.
I mean, the kiss that I never should have given you. That doesn't.
Yes.
That doesn't. Okay. But yeah, so many aspects of that just felt so like forced and all that, and
Yep.
I mean, it's still a great story. It's still, you know, I think that love story has to be there for Anakin's fall and all that stuff. But going back to Han and Leia, like you said, it just felt so natural. It just fit, you know. Even when we're going back and forth and Leia's kissing on her brother and all this other stuff, it always felt like there was, you know, that there was way more in between Han and Leia. You know, it felt like it was going to come back to that, you know.
Yep. Absolutely.
I think there's a chemistry there from the beginning.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
even when he's not sure about her and she's this princess, you know, but he's like, she's got spirit, or he says something to that effect. And, you know, another thing that struck me kind of like watching recently, it's like in a way, even though they're so different, they're kind of equals,
Yes.
you know, because it's like they both are very strong people and they know who they are. But I think he's kind of looking, she has some stability that maybe he's lacking, and he's drawn to that.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say with Leia, well, with Han, I think being from, we know now, especially his origins from the Solo movie, being you know, an orphan who never really had anyone, someone like Leia who's so stable and firm would be so attractive. And on the flip end of that, Leia coming from this kind of uptight princess upbringing, someone so flippant and so adventurous as Han would be so attractive. So I think
Even if she doesn't want to admit it at first to herself.
yeah, so I think they both see something in the other that they've lacked in their life and that they can add to it.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot in real life, you know, where something, you know, they say opposites attract. And I think sometimes that's definitely true because you find that person that kind of complements you, where they maybe have different kind of things that you need out of that relationship, and they're opposite of you, and they can kind of give you that. So I think that's certainly true with Han and Leia as well. Yeah. Adam, any more thoughts on that before we move on?
No.
Okay, so one thing I was actually, when I was thinking about these two characters, I was struggling a little bit. I was like, okay, how do I get into the psychology of Han and Leia like we've done in the past? And ultimately, I thought of this line from The Force Awakens, spoken both by Han and Leia, when they're talking about Ben Solo and his turn to the dark side and what happened after that. You know, Han says, I went back to the only thing I was ever any good at. And Leia said, we both did. So thinking about what they went back to, you know, Han obviously going back to being a smuggler and Leia going back to being a leader. What makes Han such a good smuggler? What about his personality makes him a good smuggler? And what about Leia's personality makes her a good leader? Any thoughts about that?
I think part of it for Han could be his background, like seeing it in Han Solo, like he's kind of had to be a survivor and sort of live in survival mode and be scrappy and resourceful.
Yes. And then with Leia, I think some people, leadership can be taught to a degree, but then there's just this natural ability that people are born with, and it's just in her. Like Leia she just has such a presence and a stability, and just that leader-esque quality, that's what she was born to do, was to lead, that she can literally have a goal and people are going to follow Leia. And we see that actually when the three of them first meet. Leia is the one who blasts the door open for them to shoot down into the garbage disposal or garbage chute.
Someone's got to save our skins.
Yes, because it's that thinking, like Leia always is going to have a plan, and they all jump in with her. Like people will follow Leia. Like that's just who Leia is.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think you guys both hit on some really good points about what makes them each good at what they do. And,
yeah, definitely.
Adam, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
No, I mean, I think they hit on everything pretty well. I think the only thing I was thinking is that Leia is also born into this situation where she's the adopted daughter of Bail Organa, and Bail is very much into the rebellion at that point, and so that's kind of the life that she's kind of known. She's seen that example, of what Bail has done, her adopted father has done, and I think that kind of lends to her ability to lead as well, is kind of having that
Definitely.
example. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So I was trying to dig into some different. I always like to bring a kind of a psychological theory that I learned about in college into all of this and breaking it down. So I thought about the Myers-Briggs personality styles, and basically this was kind of a theory created by Catherine Briggs and her daughter Isabel Myers, and the idea is based on your personality style, it kind of determines some of your choices and your actions and everything. So there are, like, I want to say about 16 different personality styles, and I kind of labeled Han as the adventurer and Leia as the commander personality type. And if you got a chance to look at the link I sent or anything and had any different opinions, let me know. But the commander is defined as being a bold and strong-willed leader, always finding a way or making one. And then the adventurer being flexible and charming, always ready to explore and experience something new. Would you guys agree with these personality types for these two, or disagree?
Yeah, I would agree.
I think that described it perfectly. Like Leia, to me, out of the three original characters, is the most of an alpha of all of them. And that's interesting because she's the female,
Yeah,
and we
she
usually
definitely
more
is.
associate that with men, but she's an alpha female,
Yeah.
and her will is very strong. It's going to get done. And Han is more kind of rolls with the punches and will
Right.
bend and
Yeah.
be flexible with whatever's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that nails it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I think Leia is almost the definitive, like, strong female character, and the fact that this character existed back in the late 70s, I think, is fantastic. I've always had this affinity towards Leia, and always just love that character. So yeah, I don't know, Adam, did you agree or disagree with these personality types for these
Yeah,
two?
no, I definitely. I mean, Han is definitely the adventurer. I was wondering what you would think about adding about Leia as an executive.
Mm-hmm. I could see that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to look specifically at, like, what the qualities of the executive are again.
The executive
yeah.
is someone with the extroverted, observant thinking and judging personality traits. They possess great fortitude, especially following their own sensible judgment. They often serve as a stabilizing force among others, able to offer solid direction amid adversity.
Yeah, I could certainly see that for Leia, for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
And even thinking about her character in the sequel trilogy, and kind of
Where she becomes the general.
being a mentor and a general,
Sure,
being a mentor
right.
to Poe, and providing that stability. I mean, if you think about the Rise of Skywalker, Poe going to her bedside after she's passed away and just saying, "Man, this is hard. I need you kind of thing. I don't know how to do this without you." She was that kind of stable
Is
character for him.
so let me ask you a question here. Can one character, one person fit multiple personality types like that?
I think so. Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
Any of these, psychological theories that I bring up, there's always flexibility. There's always some gray area. There's always some overlap. So certainly, yeah.
Cool.
So, do we have any? I'm thinking of what are some examples from the films that kind of give us proof that they have these personality traits. That Han is kind of that flexible adventurer, charming, and Leia is this strong-willed leader, always finding a way or making a way. I mean, with Leia, I really go back to that scene from A New Hope where she kind of finds a way to get out of that detention
That's
hall,
what I was gonna say. Yeah.
blasts the hole in there. Someone's got to save our skins.
She
So
just
it was
takes
already
over.
mentioned by
Yeah.
Michelle and Natalie, but just finding that way out.
Well, and with Han, I think too, exactly with Leia, and with Han, you see it throughout the trilogy. I mean, even with him just going with Luke and Obi-Wan's plan, even though he thinks it's kind of stupid, he just kind of keeps rolling with the punches. And even though Han is a leader in his own right and deserves the title of General Solo, he very much will go with the plan. Even though he's kind of a rebel, at the end of the day, he'll go with whatever. If he trusts you, he'll go with what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how Han is, even though he's kind of puts on that facade of being that rebel, that tough guy, even in Solo, he wants to appear as being the bad guy or the outlaw, but in the end, he always ends up coming back and being the good guy. And I think he has, so many redeeming qualities and everything, even when you think he's in it for the money and stuff like that.
Well, and I was going to say, if you want to bring in even new trilogy, what Han Solo tells, at that point, he's becoming Ben Solo again. He tells him that what his mother fought for and stood for, that's still there. And I think that's where Han and Leia find this common ground, is like their hearts. They're at their core very good people that actually do have this moral compass of what's right or wrong and fight for what's good.
Yeah, and Han always does get back to that. And I think like when you first meet the character, he's sort of presented a little bit like he's a little flaky, he might not.
A little rebellious.
Yeah, and I told Michelle one of the sweetest scenes to me, and I know men probably don't love the term sweet, but to me that's how it strikes me. When is at the end of the first one, I believe, when and we talked about this on our podcast.
After Han has come back.
He's come back
and help
and
and save Luke.
With the sincerity and the pure joy that Luke says, I knew you'd come back. I knew you would. Almost like he saw that in him, somehow already, that he had that inside of him to follow through and believe in something and to help out in that way.
Well, and piggybacking on that, Leia then, follows that statement with, I knew there was more to you than money. So she too kind of sensed there's something more to this guy. Even though he rubs me a little bit wrong, there's still something, I think, deeper that's good in this guy.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's what really makes Han the fantastic character that he is, that you think he's this one character, this one type of guy, but as it turns out, he's actually the good guy, So I love those types of characters in any story. So
yes,
and it makes him extremely likable and almost, I think, a little more relatable for people.
Yeah.
I think there's more people that can relate to Han's character more so than like the pure, like I always do the right thing. We can kind of relate to him a little more.
Yeah, going back to New Hope, I think most of us more relate to Han being like, this is a suicide mission. Like, I don't know if I want to get involved with this. But then his conscience at the end of the day couldn't let Luke be out there on his own, and he goes to save him.
Yep. No doubt.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So trying to tie this into a previous Psychology of episode that we had, tying it back into Ben Solo, because we broke down the psychology of Ben Solo. How do Han and Leia's personalities affect their parenting of Ben Solo, and what ultimately happens with Ben?
Well, I could see, Han being kind of flighty, literally, in the Millennium Falcon. I could see that, him kind of doing his own thing, and then she's of course we know from Bloodline that she was in the Senate, and her being so busy, I could see him falling a little bit through the cracks more than he probably should have.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Bloodlines is a great point. And then Last Shot also, it's the Han and Lando novel that came out around Solo. It kind of goes into Han's trouble being a father, and about how Han has this this issue where he doesn't know what to do, and so he feels more comfortable doing what he's always done and being the smuggler adventurer type, and so he kind of feels more comfortable out having an adventure, and so he goes with Lando, he helps Lando and does his thing. He misses Ben, he loves Ben a lot, but he doesn't really know how to just be there as a father.
And I can kind of see, if I were imagining him as a father, just like he is as a person, I think like his heart is so good. And like you said, I have no doubt he loved him probably with all his being, but maybe he didn't always know how to express that. I mean, I just could kind of see that of him as a person.
Ryan Bullock in chat brings up a point about Han that I wanted to mention. He says that he thinks Han puts on a mask of not caring because he doesn't want to get close to people because he was betrayed by Kira, but then he always comes back because he actually does care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like a protective wall, sort of. And even when he really does love people, it's like hard for him not to kind of resort to that, putting that wall up a little bit.
Well, I think you see that a great moment. You see that is in Return of the Jedi, where Luke has just told Leia that they're siblings, and Leia's kind of distraught, and Han goes out and he's like, "Oh, well, you can tell Luke because she won't tell him why she's bothered."
Right.
And he kind of struts off kind of angrily, just a little aggravated. And then he only makes about 2 steps, and then he
always comes
stops,
back,
he freezes and turns, and he says, "I'm sorry."
Yeah, he
So
almost immediately apologizes there.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's the good heart we're talking about.
Yes.
Stephen Miller also brings up a good point. Sorry, Josh.
That's okay.
But he says that Han never sees himself properly. Leia, Kira, and others see him better than he sees himself, so he runs because that's who he thinks he is. But they trust him because they know that he is good.
I think that's an excellent point. Maybe it's just about self-awareness for Han. He's not very self-aware of his true qualities, where other people see those things in him.
Well, I think going back to the Solo movie, you see from his upbringing, it would have been hard to truly form an identity because he had no real parental structure or people in his life. So it just would have been hard for him to truly almost know who he is.
Yeah.
And maybe, to have a high self-esteem or self-image.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I really connected with, and I think maybe it was Michelle, maybe it was Natalie who said about Ben slipping through the cracks. That really struck a chord with me because I think that's exactly what happened. Han and Leia, their personalities lend themselves to their positions of smuggler and leader and being very busy and occupied with other things, and Ben just kind of slipping through the cracks and also having a hard time forming his own identity as well.
Yeah.
So, before we wrap things up here today on this discussion, I was wondering if you guys have any final thoughts about either of these characters or what Han and Leia mean to you personally. Any way of kind of wrapping up your thoughts on these 2 characters.
Well, I will just say that, and I have my Funko Pop version here of the I know moment.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think that is one of the greatest Star Wars and movie moments in history.
Yeah.
Because it is so, I said this on our podcast, it's so, Han was more perceptive to Leia. He knew she was into him before it could really register in her mind. And it just was it wasn't arrogant when he said, "I know." It was such this confidence of like, "I know you love me." Like, it's just such this sweet, but yet powerful moment. It's just a great moment.
And mixed in with, once again, I believe his inability to be mushy or in his mind or to express himself emotionally. And then it's funny at the end of Return of the Jedi when she flips it around and I know.
I was just going to say that. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say, growing up as a kid, Han was my favorite by far, and I'm a Han woman. I'm a Han woman now. He's just such an incredible character that like you said, is so relatable and just so lovable. And with Leia too,
Because he's not perfect.
no. And then as I kind of began to become a teenager, it became Han and Leia. Like, I can't separate the 2 characters. It's like they're a pair. Like literally in this box, they're a pair. They go hand in hand. Like they just belong with each other.
And another thing, and this might be obvious, but I think they deeply respect each other.
Totally.
You know, kind of somewhat early on to, you know, to the end of their lives. I think they just have a deep respect for one another.
Yes.
Yeah, very much.
Mm-hmm.
For my final thought, I'll just actually mention a couple things in chat. I'll throw out Radio Rebellion Alberto says there's a reason the ones to bring Ben back were his parents. The love was there no matter if they made mistakes when Ben was a kid or not. And then Ryan Bullock says that he loves that he came back and the rest of Skywalker and Han and Leia both saved Ben. So
Yeah,
That was kind of perfect, actually.
yeah.
it kind of took it took both of them together to bring Ben back to the light, you know.
Yes.
So I think that was a very beautiful moment in the Rise of Skywalker. And my final comment on Han, especially, it goes back to the Force Awakens, because you know when we originally see Han in A New Hope, he doesn't believe in the Force. He thinks it's a bunch of nonsense, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But then Force Awakens, he's come a long way, and he says it's true, all of it, everything about the Jedi, you know. So I think his character growth and his character arc, one of my favorites in all of Star Wars, and Leia, like I said before, has just always been the epitome of that strong female character. And you know, I was raised by my mom and my grandma and my grandfather, my grandfather was very quiet, but I was essentially raised by women, with the leading example of my grandpa. So I've always kind of had, you know, a soft spot for female characters and strong female characters like Leia. So that's what those two characters mean to me.
That's awesome. I love
Yes.
that.
Well, and I will say this, as much as Leia is this bold, strong character, she's equally gracious and kind. And you see, and that's what makes her so lovable. She has all those traits all rolled up into one.
Absolutely.
That is for sure.
Cool.
All right. So I think that wraps up our discussion on the psychology of Han and Leia.
Yeah, we ready to wrap up episode 31?
Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, we just want to say thank you very much for having us on. We listen to you all and really appreciate you all, and have told all the people that listen to us to subscribe to you all. So thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that
really
support.
appreciate
it was a
it.
pleasure. It was a pleasure to have you. It was a great discussion. We had a lot of fun today. So
yeah,
thank
we
you so
really
much.
appreciate it. And if there's anyone else out there in chat that hasn't subscribed to Force of Light Entertainment, you're missing out. They have some great conversations, not just about Star Wars, about everything. So it's something I really appreciate about their show as well. So make sure you guys all subscribe to that. I'm going to hit the ending here, and we'll just do our normal end of the show spam. I guess
Sounds
what it
good.
is.
I'm just glad you're here. At the end.
All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for listening. Thanks, everyone in chat, for showing up and hanging out. Remember that you can find us on pretty much any podcatcher, most of the major ones. If you're on one like iTunes that you can leave a review, please do that. We'd really appreciate it. Check out the website from a certain point of view.com. There's blog articles. Josh had a new canon catch-up about season 1 of Rebels this week, and make sure to check out the socials as well. Twitter is certain POV pod. Facebook is from a certain point of view. Discord server links are in the show notes and on the website as well. Our email is certainpovpod@gmail.com. And we're hosted by Anchor.fm, where you can leave us a 60-second voicemail if you have a question or want to get your opinion on anything we talked about on any of our shows. You can always send us a voicemail, and we'd be happy to play that. Natalie and Michelle, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you, Twitter, podcasts, anything like that, where they can find you and subscribe.
Yes, you can find us. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Force of Light Entertainment. And you can find us on, like you said, pretty much all podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, all the major ones and even smaller ones. Anywhere there's podcasts, we are. Yeah.
Perfect. Josh, how about you? Where else are you doing stuff other than this?
You can find me at Jedi Jar Jar 1722 on Twitter, and you can find me writing occasional articles for StarWarsNewsNet.com.
Awesome. And I am usually on Twitter. That's where I do most of my stuff, at thegauze85. I also write for farfarawaynews.com, and just had a new article this past week on there about things I've learned so far in podcasting after 6 months. So, but yeah, that's about it. Josh, I'll turn it over to you to end our show.
Yeah, by the way, just speaking of Adam's article on Far Far Away News, I highly recommend it. I learned a lot from it myself, and we've learned a lot in this whole process of starting a podcast and sustaining it. So make sure you check that out if you're looking for some great advice. It's been such a pleasure chatting
I like it.
chatting with Michelle and Natalie and Adam as always. And we are so glad if you joined us in the chat today, or if you're listening later. We thank you for your support, and everything we said today was true.
From a certain point of view.
All right. Well, thank you guys again so much for joining us. It was a great chat.
We loved it.
It's great to be here.
Yes,
cool.
We would love to have you on again, and
yeah, absolutely, come back.
Sure, we'd love to.
We would love to. Seriously.
Sweet. I have a giveaway to announce here, and I go ahead and roll it. Our winner is Rez. Mr. Rez won the Han themed prize giveaway. Cool.
Congratulations.
So, Mr. Rez, if you're here, I'll just need your where I can send this to, your address. Hit me up on Twitter would be good. If you're not here, then I'll get in touch with you. So.
All right, guys. Well, sounds great. I got to head out because I'm heading to a picnic. But cool. It has been a pleasure. I've had a lot of fun today, and looking forward to chatting with all of you again soon.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Yes,
Later,
you
Josh.
too.
Later, Josh.
Thanks.
Thanks, Natalie and Michelle. We really appreciate it. I hope you come back.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and shut off the live stream here. So, thank you, everyone in chat, for hanging out. We appreciate it. And Mr. Rez, if you're not here, I'll be in touch with you. Congratulations, and may the force be with y'all.